There is a pervasive narrative right now about the younger generation and technology. We often hear that Gen Z is using AI as a cheat code or a shortcut that's eroding critical thinking. But Kiari Nirgin, the co-founder of Chima and a Stanford computer science alum, argues that that narrative is fundamentally incorrect. She was recently speaking at Fortune's Brainstorm AI, where she made this distinction that I think is critical for every adult to hear. Gen Z, she said, isn't adopting AI. They're growing up fluent in it. It's their native language, she said. She suggests that far from being generation shortcut, these young people are trailblazers. They aren't just handing off their cognitive load. They're using AI to offload menial tasks so that they can engage in more complex subjects with even greater intensity. She says they're not coding from scratch. They're coding side by side with agents to see just how much more they can unlock. Welcome back to this episode of The Spark Effect. The spark effect is what happens when we pay attention to students who are learning anyway, by building, by trying and reflecting and doing real work in the world. This is where we focus on young people, not as potential for what they can do someday, but as future leaders now. Young people already doing meaningful work in the world around them. These are young sparks who aren't waiting for permission. They're building projects, testing ideas, and sharing their thinking, but above all, they are learning who they are by doing this. The spark effect is about what happens when curiosity meets action and when confidence is built through practice. And above all, when learning extends far beyond the classroom. Today's guest is Olivia, a high school senior, and she's the perfect example of this idea. Today, she's going to take us behind the scenes into what she's building. Liv is a 17-year-old builder at the intersection of AI, civic technology, and human-centered design. She's the creator of Nova, an AI scheduling chatbot designed to reduce course registration anxiety, and she also founded something called Teen Civics to improve youth civic literacy. She has a keen interest in how technology can solve real-world problems while honoring human connection. Liv brings both technical expertise and thoughtful perspective to conversations about the future of AI in education. When she's not coding or collaborating with adults on civic initiatives, you'll find her learning a new language or diving into philosophy and religious texts. Liv didn't wait for a college degree or a corporate job to start building. She's a self-taught developer who is already using AI agents to solve real-world problems, from civic engagement to school navigation. She represents a generation that views technology not as a tool to be learned, but as an environment to build within. What really struck me most in our conversation wasn't just her technical abilities, but the sheer poise she had in a world of infinite improvement. So I begin by asking Liv, who's already stepped into all these incredible roles as an app developer and a LinkedIn creator, about her barrier to entry. I think a lot of people, even those twice her age, struggle to just get started. So I wanted to know, what gave her the confidence and what motivated her to pursue these paths so early on?
I think most of the confidence for me actually came while I was building and while I was putting myself out there rather than when I started. But the initial motivation was I felt like I was learning a lot of interesting things in school and I wanted to get them out into the world, you know? And a lot of the inspiration for the things I build too is based on like problems or gaps that I see in the world. But most of the confidence that came from putting out my work, I just had to like suck it up and say, okay, I'm gonna put my stuff out there. And then as I had my work out, I got a lot of feedback, whether it was positive or negative. Both of those things made me more confident to where I felt like I could put out more projects moving forward because as I put things out, I learned a lot from what I was doing. I picked up new skills as things maybe broke or as people gave me feedback on it. And so through the trial and error of putting things out there, getting feedback, I gained that confidence in myself that I can put things out there. And even if they break or people give me feedback, it's okay because I can recover and still make good final product.
It's so powerful to hear that confidence isn't a prerequisite for starting, it's actually a byproduct of the work itself. You see, Liv realized early on that breaking things wasn't a sign of failure, but a part of the developmental process. But even with that mindset, the internal critic can be loud. Most of us, regardless of our age, struggle with the feeling that if a project isn't perfect, it isn't ready. For a young developer building in the public eye, that pressure is amplified. So I asked Liv to take us inside her head. What were some of the specific thoughts or mental hurdles she had to battle as she first began doing this work?
I think a lot of it was a struggle with my perfectionism that I had to build something perfect and I couldn't like when I before I put it out, I had to make sure there were no flaws because I was so scared that I would put it out there and leave a bad impression because stuff would break. And so I would spend like months, like even when it was done, just months like nitpicking at the tiniest stuff and then making a change and then going back and making a change and going back. And so I think the thoughts I had to battle with were just put it out there once after a reasonable period of time, I felt like it was complete. And if people give negative feedback, it doesn't mean that my product's never going to do well. It just means that inevitably, like as I expected, there's going to be things that I have to fix, and that's okay. And it's just a part of the development process. But I learned not to let my fear stop me from ever putting out something in the first place, because it's ultimately a form of like procrastination or you being scared to nitpick too much.
What Liv is describing is something that even the most seasoned entrepreneurs struggle with, that procrastination by nitpicking, where fear disguises itself as perfectionism. She had to learn that negative feedback isn't an ending, but a necessary part of the process. But as any builder knows, that as any creator knows, once you finally silence that internal critic and hit publish, you have to face a whole new set of voices, the audience. So I asked Liv about that transition. When she finally stepped out and started getting feedback, both the good and the bad, how did she navigate it? Was there a specific story or a piece of feedback that stood out to her?
Positive feedback for sure. The biggest one was I had my teen civics project posting on X automatically, and I ended up actually doing some outreach on LinkedIn where I just put the link to my project, and I think I put a post or something like that there, and I just wrote about it. And I connected with my AP Gov teacher on LinkedIn, and he found it. And so as I was walking to class one day, he was like, "Liv, I need to talk to you." And I was like, "Oh shoot!" But then, no, just kidding. But then he pulled me aside. He's like, I found your app. This is so interesting. I want to talk about it in my class. I want to share it with other teachers. And so that was a really meaningful moment to me, that my teacher saw about, because I built Teen Civics based on AP Gov. And so the fact that he then saw value in it was really meaningful to me. And it made me want to expand it and share it with more people. And then negative feedback. The main thing I got from some of my peers was they thought it was just something I was doing for my resume. And I was like, all right, I mean, you can say that. But also I'm not like a professional coder. I've been only coding for like 3 years. And I'm largely self-taught too. So I got a lot of criticism, I think, on the UI because that's something I need to work on. And then if stuff broke, I guess people would be like, oh, I don't know if you spent enough time developing this, but I feel it as though I did. But I'd say the UI was I got a lot of feedback from people I was sharing it to. And maybe some of the functionality too, in that people didn't like the AI summaries or they're like, oh, how are you preventing misinformation? And the answer is just like it's just trained on the bill itself and my own prompt. So there's nowhere for it to inject misinformation. But a lot of people were very skeptical about the AI and they said like, oh, why don't you just handwrite the summaries? I'm like, well, that's not the point. But I think the negative feedback I got was either people missing the point of what I was trying to do, and they didn't like the AI, or they thought the UI wasn't good, or they thought that my motivations for building the app weren't in the right place. So I started building Teen Civics or like the basic outline for it in May 2025 this year, for the Congressional App Challenge is what I wanted to do. And I originally started building it as a place. I knew what I wanted to do. I knew I wanted to make civic information more accessible, but I didn't have a focus group and I didn't know how I was going to do that until I started taking AP Gov in August of this year. And then I started learning about the process of how bills become law and how Congress works and why youth don't engage with civics and with voting. And then from there, I started to come up with a solution. And well, my solution is I take bills from congress.gov through the API, and I have an LLM that I prompt to summarize these bills in teen-friendly language, with no acronyms like the teens might not understand, such as maybe FCC if they don't know what that is, with no complex jargon. And if there is jargon, I put term dictionaries, and it's all at an 8th to 10th grade reading level. So I have that, and then it also posts when I pull these bills and summarize them every day, it also posts them to X. And I'm planning to expand it to other social media feeds too. And so the idea is instead of having to check this app every single day, a teen will just be scrolling on their social media feed and will see the bill summary of the day and then can click out to the longer summary on the website. And so what inspired it was I wanted to bridge this disconnect between teens and the civic process, or I guess voting and politics in general, because what I learned in AP Gov was that politicians largely engage with the people who engage with them, because they learn more about their needs, and youth don't do that as often as other demographics do. And one of the reasons, it's not just that youth are apathetic, it's that, or maybe they're not even in general, because I know youth care a lot about different issues, but it's that the information isn't very accessible. Like Congress.gov is where these bills are, and I don't know many teens that know what Congress.gov is, much less have the time to read like a 300-page bill. It's hard if you're not at a higher reading level or if you don't have expertise in one of those fields. And so that was my goal to bridge that gap, to help teens be generally more informed too about the laws that affect their lives. And that was inspired in part by my AP Gov teacher. I remember there's these graphs on the screen of government trust, and it was just straight down. Specifically for youth too, it showed like voting engagement. And I remember seeing that it was ages, I believe. Well, let me pull up the exact stat just so I get this right. But I have it on my website because it was the thing that inspired me. Okay, 17% of Americans aged 18 to 29 said that they trusted the federal government to do what is right most of the time, according to Pew Research in 2024, which that was crazy to me. Like 17% is very low, in my mind. And then also this, when I was developing the app, it was in the middle of the government shutdown too. And I remember hearing a lot about civic programs kind of closing or maybe not working as effectively. And also, I heard another stat. This is my textbook as I was reading, but it was that 60% of teens had encountered political misinformation online in the past year. And that was from Common Sense Media in 2024. And so all those things combined, I think the main thing was seeing the chart on the screen in AP Gov of just the government trust going down, but also hearing about the misinformation. I realized like it's so difficult to engage in the civic process if you don't trust your government and you don't even have accurate information about what's going on. And so I made Teen Civic so that teens could see what the government is actually doing, instead of hearing up from maybe more like polarized or opinionated sources that might not accurately portray what the government is doing, and then to give like firsthand information directly from the Congress.gov bills explaining what's actually going on.
In that AP Gov classroom, she wasn't just looking at a chart, she was looking at a map of a broken landscape. When she points out that historic dip in trust, the feeling that the official systems just aren't working, she's touching on the defining anxiety for Gen Z. But what makes her story so striking isn't that she sees the problem, it's how she's responding to it. She's leaning into two specific skills that the media and even some experts are currently telling her generation they can just move past because AI will do them. The first one is coding. In 2025, the headlines were everywhere. AI is the new developer, or vibe coding is enough. The narrative says don't bother learning the logic, just ask the machine. And the second is the recession of reading. Statistics show that reading enjoyment is at a 20-year low. Only about 18% of teens today read for pleasure daily. We're told that deep attention's a relic of the past, that the scroll has won. But listen to how she describes her habits. She's not just a consumer, she's an architect of her own learning. So what drives a teenager to take on the hardest technical subjects when the world is telling her she doesn't have to? To understand her motivation, we have to go back to when this started, the 2020 lockdowns. While the world was mourning learning loss and treating young people as if they were falling behind an arbitrary schedule, she was discovering her own rhythm and passion. She wasn't just losing classroom hours, she was gaining a rare kind of self-directed drive. Now, Demis Hassabis, the CEO of Google DeepMind and Nobel laureate, said that in the age of AI, the most important skill a person can have isn't a specific piece of knowledge, but it's learning how to learn. He calls this a meta skill, the ability to master complex subjects from scratch, because because the machines, he said, are changing the rules every single week. During the pandemic, millions of students were forced into this mode. They had to become their own teachers and own troubleshooters, but very few had that spark nurtured when they came back to the classroom. But Liv did. When she talks about coding, it's not just a paycheck or has nothing to do with it. It's about power and intelligence. In a 2025 landscape where 80% of teens distrust the algorithms they use, knowing how to code is the only way, she says, to peer inside the black box. She understands something the vibe coders, those who just let AI do the work, don't. If you don't know the language of the machine, you're going to be at the mercy of the person who programmed it. I wanted to know what kept her going when the cameras were off and the schools were out of session. So let's ask her, what actually motivated her to do the hard work of learning independently?
So I make my apps using Python. Mostly I use Flask to build my websites. Um, so I started learning Python during quarantine. I was around 13-ish, 13, 14. Wait, no, it's 2020, so I was a little younger. That was like, maybe I was like 12. But I started learning during the pandemic, and I learned from Coursera. I still remember the exact course that I took. It's called Python for Everybody because I had no experience at all. And I audited it for free on Coursera, and I did the whole specialization. That took me around like a year to finish the whole thing. And then after that, I started taking some, this was when I consider the Coursera like self-taught because it was just videos, then I had to do the exercises. But then after that, I wanted to learn more, so I took beginners and advanced Python at my local community college. And then after that, in the advanced Python course is where I was introduced to web development libraries. So in the Python for Everybody course that I took, I learned about like how to manipulate data files. I learned a bit about APIs, but then in the advanced Python course that I took at the community college, I learned more about specifically stuff like Flask or Django or various like AI tools too that I could use to like really make an app come to life. And I got into app development specifically because I felt it was the easiest way for me to turn like the ideas in my mind into an actual product. So that's what inspired me to do that. I feel like I was drawn to it because it just gives you so much leverage to enact the ideas you want into the world. And I felt like it was a good use of, I guess, what I was learning in school and my creativity. And then, yeah, that was my experience.
What Liv is describing is the need to understand the why behind the code. And she's echoing exactly what Kiara shared at her Fortune talk. Nirgan argued that when we offload the menial cognitive labor to an agent, it doesn't mean that we stop thinking. It means we have to think deeper. And for Liv, that deep work shows up in a place many would find surprising for a developer. Reading. In an era where reading enjoyment is at an all-time low, Liv isn't just scrolling. She's engaging with complex research and raw data to feed her AI tools. She's leaning into her human judgment and decision-making skills that are becoming the ultimate human advantage. The World Economic Forum recently released a report called New Economy Skills, Unlocking the Human Advantage. They found that tasks tied to empathy, creativity, and curiosity had just a 13% potential for AI replacement. Why? Because those things depend on human judgment, context, lived experience. And as you can hear, Liv is building those exact unautomatable muscles right now. But these aren't areas that kids typically are told to prioritize in school to complement their transcripts. They often sit outside of the grading system and sometimes just school altogether. This is exactly why we created the Future Ready Student Playbook. It's an experience that any school can integrate into their core curricular class so that they can help students practice judgment, reflection, and storytelling when it comes to using AI. We help young people turn their everyday learning experiences and assessments into portfolios that prove how they think, decide, and are growing. And if you want to see how this can be used inside of your school, I invite you to book a call with our team so we can discuss further.
I started looking at some courses on YouTube, but I noticed that a lot of YouTube sequences were either incomplete or I don't know. I feel like sometimes I didn't fully trust the people on YouTube. And so Coursera was nice because it was a course by U Michigan and it was an actual professor there. So I knew this was like reputable and it was a fully built out sequence of courses. And I also liked how it was kind of in modules and you have tests and exercises. And so it wasn't just like I was watching these videos, like passively learning, and then sometimes I could apply it and I had to figure out how to apply it. I had like structured exercises, and that was easy for, I guess, young Liv. And then later on, I started kind of learning stuff on my own once I had a foundation. Then I could look up the documentation and learn different libraries and then self-apply these projects. But I feel like it's easier to just fully focus on coding and not have to think about how can I apply this? How can I test myself? So that's why I was drawn toward Coursera. I was supported at the beginning when I was doing this Coursera, but then afterward, there was kind of this plateau or kind of period where I expected to be progressing like linearly, but then the progression was kind of more like that, where I had a ton of random coding knowledge. I didn't know how to actually connect it or build something. And so that was tough. I just had to keep learning and having faith. But then after I reached that kind of critical point of where I had enough knowledge where I could start building, then it was really easy to stay motivated because I could start building more complex projects. But at first it was hard because I could only build very simple things, so I couldn't see actually being useful. But I would say it's helpful having like my instructor on Coursera, the person I watch videos from, I thought he was very funny. And so it was nice being able to like watch it, even though like I didn't have him like positively reinforcing me because I couldn't talk to him, but that kept me motivated. And then I just wanted the joy of finishing the sequence.
Mhm.
And then yeah, eventually after I started building through the sequence like more complex projects, um, it was more motivating seeing how I'd progressed. And I got to the point where I was kind of starting to see in my projects, like whether it's like a budget tracker or I was creating like a simulation, like a kind of game or something like that. I was like, oh, I could actually see this evolving into something. And then that kind of sparked my curiosity of, oh, I want to learn how to take this to the next step. And then the Coursera branched off for me into more self-directed where I'm just reading online about the things that I learned in the videos that kind of sparked my curiosity. And so I'd say the most difficult part was when you don't see yourself building stuff that you could take further, but you just have to accumulate enough knowledge and enjoy the process of just accumulating the knowledge and have faith that eventually you're going to learn enough where you can start building whatever you want. And I think AI was helpful with that too because I could get it to code things and learn from its code and then be able to build those things myself. So I could have it make something for me and then see something that I could actually do in the future and then learn from how it did it so I could replicate it myself. So I'd say it's a very valuable tool. If you don't like, I wouldn't recommend building everything with just AI because then it gets to the point where you're building stuff that's you can't really maintain because AI just kind of did it for you. But I would say it's very helpful to have it build stuff to motivate you and then learn from what it did and then replicate it yourself and then start modifying it and making it better based on your own vision. I know a lot of people say they don't think it's valuable to code because AI can do it. And I would say it's still helpful because if you have a basic foundation, then as I kind of said earlier, you can look at what AI is doing and actually learn from it to apply the stuff yourself. And I would say it's difficult to come up with things you can build if you don't understand how to build them because you wouldn't even know where to start in prompting the AI, or you wouldn't know what you can actually accomplish with code. Like I didn't know what an API was before I learned about it, and I wouldn't have known that I could make a program that could go to congress.gov and grab a bill and post to X if I hadn't known about APIs and how to implement them. Um, so I would say it's still helpful to understand coding so you know what you can and maybe can't do with coding so that if you know everything you can do with coding, then you have more creative ideas in your mind so that you can explore and start building. And if you have a coding foundation, then it just compounds on itself as you use AI because you can learn from what it's doing to make yourself better versus if you don't really have anything, then it's kind of you're stuck where you're just completely reliant on what the AI is doing and there's a possibility you just break your project because you don't know how to fix it and the AI doesn't know how to fix it. And then that would be very disheartening. So it's helpful to have the motivations know that you can fix the things you've built, even if you're coding it with AI, and to have the ability to control what it's doing and manipulate it to exactly your vision, where you're the one putting the project to life rather than relying on the intermediary of AI to make your vision for you and it might get diluted.
Because as Liv tells us, mentorship and the right environment don't just prepare you for a job, they help you figure out who you are becoming. Because even with all this evidence and deep thinking, the lazy narrative persists. So I wanted to put it to Liv directly. What is her response when she hears people say that kids are just using AI to cheat or find a shortcut?
I would say to speak to your point about students being more cautious, I think it's because we use AI a lot, so we know its limitations. And so if you were to upload, like, sometimes I do this. If I have like a lesson PDF, I'll put it into AI and I'll say, oh, can you quiz me on this? And sometimes it gets stuff wrong because I'm listening in the lesson and I know. But if I just were to rely on what it said, I'm like, oh, this is a little off. And so I think because students have experience using it, when you use it, you learn its limitations versus if you don't use it, you might just be more cautious, like, oh, I don't know what it's going to do at all. And so you can't like plan for its limitations as well. I would say if you use to tie into that point, if you use AI, you're more informed about it, and so you don't have to worry as much about it doing something. Versus if you never use it, then eventually you're gonna have to interact with AI as it like integrates into society more, and then when you use it, you're not going to be as well equipped or understand its limitations as much. And so that's what I would say to that. And then I would also say it's kind of like the saying, like, don't throw out the baby with the bathwater, in that has a lot of potential. And of course, there's potential for bad. There's potential for bad on the internet too. But that doesn't mean we should stop using the internet. And so I'd say it's a very valuable resource for learning. Even if you're using AI to code, you learn from what it's doing. Or if you're using AI to help you prep for a test. Like, I don't see why you wouldn't do that when it's faster. It can take information from the internet. You can talk to it and have it quiz you versus using like pen and paper to study just because there's like a small risk that I'd say in other words, like the net benefit of AI in my eyes is good. And if you're well informed about what it can and can't do, which you only get through using it, that's how you can fully exploit the net benefit instead of just completely ignoring it because you don't have experience using it and you don't get any benefit. I was not familiar with ChatGPT until late 10th grade. Well, no, I'd say early 10th grade, late ninth grade is when I started learning about ChatGPT personally. And I remember when it came out, everyone was scared, like, oh, people are going to write with AI. And I was like, oh, let's see. And so I went and tried to write with it. And I was like, this is horrible. So then I didn't write with it at all. But now it's getting better to the point where sometimes I have it write something just like to test it, and it'll write something. I'm like, okay, it's not bad. But so it's interesting to see that kind of progression. But I think because I first was exposed to it when it was so bad at writing, I don't have it write for me very often. But I thought it was really interesting to see it grow and see its new capabilities. I first started using it extensively when I would take lesson PDFs and put them into the AI and have it just make test questions for me and then go through and I use it mostly for English actually, where I'd have it take like past AP prompts or have it make up prompts or make up a poem for me to analyze, and then I would write to it and then it would tell me like, oh, I think you should tweak this. I think based on the rubric that you uploaded, you didn't fully expand on this point. And so I liked it the most for stuff like writing because I feel like that's when it's hardest to get teacher feedback because it takes a long time to grade a ton of writing. But then also there's not an infinite amount of like MCQ or multiple choice resources that your teacher puts out. And so it's helpful to make questions for that. But I'd say I mainly used it as like a study guide. And then now I'll use it to help me debug code sometimes for personal projects, or help me like optimize code if I write something that I think looks really clunky and then ask it like, but I think it's very important to always ask the AI things like, oh, why did you do that? Oh, what did I do wrong? Instead of just having it fix something and be like, all right, and then just uploading it back. So it obviously can be used to make your work faster, but I think you gain more from it too if you ask it how it did something so you can gain those skills yourself too.
Okay, so I just have to pause and ask, where and how is she learning all this? Because I know it is not happening at school.
I would say personally it's trial and error because it wasn't until this year, I think, maybe last year, where the school, so I go to IUSD, which is Irvine Unified School District. That's where I go to school. And I think Gemini is our IUSD approved AI. So it wasn't until pretty recently that we had that. And I think in only one class I've had, it was my AP Lang class, where the teacher explained, like, oh, you can put your writing and prompt it like this, and it will give you feedback. But for the most part, I haven't been exposed in my classes to a lot of prompt engineering or AI literacy. I learned it to some extent. I went to a program over the summer called Cosmos, where it's a research program, and I had the professor teach me like how to prompt AI to help me with coding. But most of it is just trial and error. Through use of AI, I figure out like oh, it's struggles if you don't give it full context, then it'll give it an answer that makes you go like, what? So you have to really explain everything about the situation, and it helps to upload things like PDFs and rubrics and to like over explain yourself almost. But I would say trial and error is really how I figured that out. And then talking to friends too, where like, oh, I got this really cool study guide. I'm like, oh, how did you do that? And they're like, oh, this is the prompt that I used. And I'm like, oh. And then you could also do independent research is kind of what I did too on how to make a good prompt. I think we might have had at our school last year like a promptathon. I think it was called something like that. I don't know much about that, but I'm pretty sure it was to create something with AI, which I think is very helpful. But mostly trial and error, learning from my friends or looking up stuff online, seeing YouTube videos, how to use AI. Yeah.
What you're hearing in Liv's approach is the hallmark of a design thinker. She doesn't just see a problem, like the historic dip in government trust or the complexity of a new technology, and look for a simple answer. She asks questions. She treats every single project as a prototype, knowing that her first try won't be her last try. She's a self directed, motivated learner who isn't waiting for a syllabus to tell her what's next. And above all, she is driven by a profound sense of curiosity. But while Liv has built this mindset independently, it raises a critical question for all of us in education. How many more students would be building like this if the system was designed to support them? So I asked Liv to look at her own journey and tell me, as a student who is already out there doing the work, what kind of support would she want to see more of in schools?
I would say right now, at least at my school, teachers are doing a good job of not demonizing AI. I remember it always scared me earlier in my school when they put in like the big, bold, underlined text on every assignment. Do not use AI. I'm like, okay. But so that would always scare me. I'd say like scaring students about using AI is not good. I'd say it's nice to always have clarifications too on every assignment to say here are acceptable uses of AI on this assignment and here is not acceptable uses. And I think that's teachers are doing a pretty good job of that right now. What is advice I would give? I'd say teachers need to talk to their students and learn about how they're studying for things and the tools that they're using. You could do that either through surveys or just talking to them. And through that, they would stay more informed about how students are using AI so that they could, if they think students are using it in a bad way, go and explain why is this a bad way, how to use it better, instead of just being in the dark about what students are doing because then they would maybe demonize a tool that doesn't need to be demonized or miss the opportunity to educate students on how to use it in a better way. So I'd say stay informed, speak to students, and learn about up-to-date information on what students are using in school.
Liv's advice to teachers is simple but profound. Get to know how your students learn. When we understand the specific tools and workflows that our students are experimenting with, we move from becoming enforcers to becoming partners in their growth. But as Liv found out, when the classroom doesn't have space for that kind of experimentation, students will find a place that does. And for her, that place was LinkedIn. She didn't join to find a job. She joined to find a community, to promote her work, gather feedback from others, and see what was possible beyond her zip code. This bridge between classroom learning and real-world application is exactly why we created the WISE framework. We've helped school districts adopt this framework to give teachers and students a clear decision-making criteria for using AI. It's not just about saying yes or no to a tool. It's about teaching young people and really everyone how to use AI with intention, ethically and strategically to enhance their own human intelligence. By sharing her journey on LinkedIn, Liv is doing exactly what the WISE framework encourages. She's taking ownership of her own learning and her digital identity. So I asked Liv to take us back to the beginning of that journey. What originally inspired and prompted her to join LinkedIn, and what has that experience been like as a student?
So I joined LinkedIn because I wanted to promote my work on Substack, and I also wanted to promote the writing I was doing and the organization for it's a student-led organization at my school called Our AI, and I wanted to promote that organization and its work. And so the first thing I put on my LinkedIn was that I'm a staff writer for Our AI and linked to the website. And so I mainly joined to get more publicity and outreach. And it was also interesting to see what my peers were doing and have stuff to talk to them about, know who I could maybe work with on future projects. Um, and recently I've been using it in promoting teen civics, promoting my projects, where when I posted it on LinkedIn, that's how my gov teacher, Mr. Ascendez, found it. And then he endorsed it on his LinkedIn, and that's how a board member at IUSD found my project and wants to meet with me. And so I'm meeting in 2 weeks or a week and a half or so to talk to her about my project. And so I'd say LinkedIn is a very powerful tool for outreach and learning about what other people are doing so you don't miss those opportunities yourself if you're interested, and then sharing your work to get more feedback or commentary on it. So that was the initial reason I joined, and now it's like blossomed into something where I gain a lot more benefit from it. I would say it's helpful for your own confidence, as I've kind of experienced, where if you put things out there early on, you know that you can adapt to changes if something kind of breaks on the fly and you need to fix it, or if someone gives you a new viewpoint you hadn't considered to make your app better. Like, for example, in Teen Civics, I recently added like a light dark mode toggle
Oh,
because one of my
really?
friends on LinkedIn DM'd me and said, "Oh, do you have a dark mode for your app?" I'm like, "No, I don't." And that's probably very helpful because a lot of teens like dark mode. So, I'd say getting feedback to make your stuff better because inevitably, like, no matter how much I worked on developing my app and putting every feature I could think of, there's going to be stuff that you don't think of that other people would know. And LinkedIn's a good like testing testing bed, or I don't forget what the saying is. It's a good like I guess, incubator for your ideas to get feedback on them before you maybe try to export it to everyone in the world because you first get it from your connections and people who are interested in your work. I
Yeah.
think it's valuable for that reason. And I also think it's valuable because it helps me stay more interested in what I'm learning at school because I take things in and I can go apply them. And when I see that the stuff I learn in school has applications in the real world, it makes me more motivated to take in content at school because then I think, oh, this could be what fuels my next project. This could be something that I use to improve my existing project. So it gives me more motivation to pay attention in class and to be engaged, talk to my teachers, try new things, and taking classes that I hadn't initially considered I wanted to take so that I can build more projects and keep fulfilling my passion.
What I love about Liv's approach to LinkedIn is that she isn't just posting, she's learning. It allows her to see what others in the industry are doing and make powerful connections between the theory she's learning in school and the reality of what's happening outside of school. This is exactly the kind of experience we believe every young person should have. And that's exactly why we built the experience, the Future Ready Student Playbook. It provides a structured path for young people to do exactly what Liv is doing, but inside of school, bridging the gap between the classroom and the real world. And if you want to bring this experience to your school district, you can find all the information in our show notes. Because as Liv is about to share, there's a specific reason why she isn't waiting until after college to build her network and online presence. While most people wait for graduation or even a career crisis to start documenting and sharing their work online, Liv sees the unique window she has right now. So I ask her, why start now? Why not wait until you're graduating or starting to, kind of get ready for your career and put yourself out there as you get a job?
I feel like right now I'm very lucky in that I'm living with my parents and they take care of a lot of stuff for me. And I'm young too, so I'm not like burdened by the problems of adulthood. And so I can just build. I can just sit in my room for 10 hours a day and build if I wanted to, and not have to worry about like grades in college or getting a degree. Like I have to graduate high school, but it's a lot less work than if I was in college. And so I have a lot of free time. I have a lot of motivation. Um, and I have a network now in high school that I'm going to lose when I go to college. And so it's good to connect with people now and gain what I can from there. And then also it's helpful because I have like a longer time horizon to build things. Like I've already built 3 projects by now, one of which completely broke. My first project I ruined it. And so if I'd been starting my first project after I left college, it'd be stressful because I'd feel as though I don't have any room for failure. And if I break a project, then I've wasted a lot of valuable time because I only have fewer years left. But now I have room to break stuff and learn and experiment, like take risks in what I build, knowing that the projects that I build don't have to like financially support me yet. I can just explore and learn so that when I do leave college, I could build something that's more viable that I could turn into a career or that could be like a, I guess, viable side project. Um, and in general, it's just more time to learn and develop skills so that I can do more in my lifetime than if I had started like 10 years later or 5 years later.
What struck me most in those final words from Liv is her understanding of time. She realizes that her greatest luxury right now isn't the AI at her fingertips. It's the window of time she has to experiment, to break things, to fail before the high stakes of adulthood set in. Most people only start building their digital identity or professional network when they have to, when they're job hunting or facing a career shift. But Liv is showing us that when we pair school coursework with real world engagement, we give students a 4-year head start on figuring out who they are becoming. Liv is a trailblazer, not just because she knows how to code, but because she knows how to learn. And that is the ultimate human advantage. Let's thank Liv for sharing her story. Thank you all for listening, and I hope you'll give Liv a follow and support her in her journey and her work. I asked Liz where people can connect with her.
My social media for Teen Civics, where it posts the bills every day, is at capital T, teen, no space, capital C, civics. Then the website you said is going to be linked, but it's teencivics.org. All, I guess you can do whatever capitalization. Teencivics.org, no space, no underscores. Um, my X handle is at livskeet, just LIVSKEETE, no space. My Substack is Liv Writes AI. And my LinkedIn is also livskeet. If you want to go on my LinkedIn. But yeah. And then if you want to email me, you can email me at liv@di.st.